The concierge's voice trembled slightly, her polite facade thinning as her eyes flickered toward the small crowd gathering near the marble reception desk. "Ma'am, for the third time, we do not understand you." The Japanese woman in the navy blue coat didn't flinch. Her hands remained gracefully clasped in front of her, fingers unmoving, yet her gaze, sharp, deliberate, almost military, swept across the room with the precision of a commander surveying a tense battlefield. Behind her, a young assistant in a dark suit stood frozen in anxious silence, his thumbs working frantically over the glass screen of his phone as if he could summon a solution through sheer desperation. In the background, two translators whispered furiously to one another, cheeks flushed, their words dissolving into helpless murmurs. "Should we call security?" one staff member muttered, voice tight with uncertainty. "She's not aggressive," another countered quietly, "but she refuses to respond to English, French, or Mandarin. And she's booked in the presidential suite." The last words were almost reverent, as though the room itself should bow to the title. From the far end of the grand lobby, near the brass luggage carts gleaming under crystal chandeliers, Elliot Barnes polished the edge of a glass table with slow, methodical strokes. His gray janitor's uniform allowed him to dissolve into the background, a deliberate invisibility. In a place like the Royal Grand Hotel, opulence wasn't only in the marble and chandeliers. It was in the hierarchy of who was noticed, whose voice mattered, and whose existence faded quietly into the wallpaper. Then, from the sweeping curve of the grand staircase, came the sharp, confident staccato of stilettos striking polished stone. Veronica Hale, the hotel's general manager, descended with the precision of a Broadway actress hitting her mark. Her crimson lipstick caught the light, her smile as perfectly curated as the lobby's fresh orchids. "Good morning," she said with an air of theatrical calm, resting both hands on the counter. "I'm the general manager here. How may we assist you, miss?" The Japanese woman gave no reply. "Miss," Veronica repeated, firmer now, leaning forward ever so slightly. Still, the woman remained silent, her expression unreadable. A faint twitch of frustration flickered across Veronica's face as she turned toward her staff with a smile too practiced to be genuine. "She's refusing to speak. This is unacceptable." The murmurs in the lobby swelled, the atmosphere subtly shifting. From his corner, Elliot felt it. Something more corrosive than mere confusion. It was the quiet, poisonous blend of contempt dressed as courtesy, fear wearing the mask of professionalism. Veronica's voice took on an edge as she leaned closer to the woman, speaking slowly, as though to a stubborn child. "This is America, ma'am. If you want service here, you need to speak English." There was a pause, then a sound. Small, almost imperceptible. A single exhale from the woman, slow and measured, the kind of breath that carried weight far beyond its sound. It slid down Elliot's spine like cold water. The assistant finally stepped forward, his voice trembling. "She's not being difficult. She simply prefers to handle formal matters in her native language." "Formal?" Veronica laughed, the sound brittle. "We're not in Tokyo. If she wants towels or champagne, she can point like everyone else. But she's blocking the check-in line." Elliot set down the cloth on his cart. His hands felt oddly steady, though something inside him had shifted. He began walking toward the reception desk, not out of conscious choice, but because something in the woman's eyes demanded it. There was no arrogance in them, no pleading, only the unshakable presence of someone being weighed in a currency they never agreed to trade in. Veronica flicked her fingers toward a nearby security guard. "Escalate this to management security." The assistant stepped quickly between them, alarm in his voice. "Please, she's not causing any harm. She is one of the most respected executives in Japan." "She's delaying service in a 5-star hotel," Veronica snapped. "We don't have time for guessing games and silent treatment." The woman's right hand moved. Just a fraction, a tiny twitch. before returning to stillness. Her silence was not submission. It was steel. That was when Elliot stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said quietly. The room seemed to pause. Heads turned. Veronica's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Barnes, this doesn't concern maintenance." "I know," he replied simply. He turned toward the guest, his posture shifting subtly. Then, with a slight bow, barely noticeable to most, but precise enough to carry the full weight of respect, he spoke in soft, fluent Japanese. "Oh, wo, Itakasu-sama. Would you care for a cup of tea, Miss Nakamura?" The world seemed to hold its breath. Even the gentle piano music playing overhead faded into nothingness. The woman's gaze changed, not wide with shock, but deep with the slow recognition of being truly seen for the first time that day. She replied in Japanese, her voice low and melodic. Elliot nodded, gesturing toward the lounge. "We can sit there. No pressure. No misunderstanding." Daniel, the assistant, turned toward the staff, still stunned. He's speaking with her perfectly, with Kyoto intonation." "How?" Veronica's voice cracked just slightly, the first hint of her composure breaking. "How do you even know Japanese?" "I don't think that matters right now," Elliot said gently. Veronica's lips parted as if to speak, but Grace Nakamura, the woman who had been silent for 15 long minutes, lifted one hand. Her eyes stayed locked on Elliot as she spoke softly. "Oshima, I'll take you up on your offer." And just like that, the most influential woman in the entire lobby walked away from the marble counter, her heels whispering against the polished floor, and fell into step beside a janitor, heading toward the quiet lounge. Not a single extra word passed between them, yet the silence they left behind was heavier than the noise that had filled the air moments before. In that stunned stillness, guests and staff alike found themselves asking a question they'd never dared to voice before. Who exactly is this janitor? And, more importantly, what else has this place chosen not to see? Jackson Westbrook wasn't born into privilege. His earliest kitchen had been the back of a battered rental van, a dented propane stove wedged between plastic crates, and a second-hand cooler that only half worked on good days. He remembered nights when the heat in his apartment failed and the pipes burst, when he wrapped himself in clean linens and slept inside the walk-in freezer at work because it was the only place he could stay warm. He'd cooked weddings where the bride's bouquet had been borrowed from a cousin's garden, catered corporate lunches for clients who took months to pay, and poured his energy into charity events where the only reward was a sincere handshake. But he built something from all of it. One kitchen became 4. 4 grew into 14. Somewhere along that climb, he'd started trusting other people to watch the floors he no longer had time to mop. That trust had been necessary for growth, but trust without scrutiny was a dangerous thing. Westbrook Catering Hub, location number 9, had been open for just under a year. The latest quarterly report put a red flag next to its name. A 28% drop in returning clients, an uptick in last-minute cancellations, reviews that mentioned cold plates, late deliveries, and menus arriving wrong. When Jackson asked Ronald, his district lead, about it, Ronald had shrugged, calling it a rough patch, just turnover and a couple of green hires. But Jackson had heard that story before. Bad numbers always had a heartbeat, and it rarely matched the rhythm management tried to sell. He didn't want PR spin. He didn't want a feel-good internal memo or a staged visit from corporate. He wanted to see the truth raw, without the filters, without the polite lies people told when the boss was watching. So, he shaved his beard, dyed his hair, slipped on thick glasses, and pinned a name tag over his chest that read, Josh. Not even his assistant, his board, or his wife knew. If he walked in as Jackson Westbrook, the owner, he'd be met with smiles and false assurances. But as Josh, a nobody, he might just hear what people actually said when they thought no one important was listening. The kitchen was already a storm when he arrived. Steam twisted into the air from stovetops, Knives clattered on cutting boards, and orders were barked in quick, sharp bursts. Angela, clipboard in hand, barely looked up when he stepped in. "You're the new guy. Preparation, follow me." She moved fast, leading him through a maze of metal counters and burn scars etched into the floor. "That's Mitch," she muttered with a tilt of her chin toward the far line. "Head cook. Don't ask questions. Don't fall behind." Mitch was built like an ex-linebacker, apron streaked with grease, his face red, not just from the heat, but from habit. His eyes moved like searchlights, scanning everything, missing nothing. "Name?" he barked without looking up. "Josh," Jackson said evenly. Mitch snorted. "Figures. You ever worked in a real kitchen, Josh? Or is this one of those TikTok career pivots?" Jackson stayed silent. "Fine, carrots. You're not touching protein until I say so. Screw it up, you're gone." Mitch turned on his heel without waiting for an answer. 15 minutes later, the side door slammed open and Tasha, the dishwasher, rushed in soaked to the bone. Her shoes squeaked on the tile, apron still half-tied. "You're late again," Mitch snapped. "Why, rain scare you?" "I bus," she said softly. "I don't care. You want to work here or you want to beg with the rest of the trash?" The words hung in the air. Nobody spoke. Not Angela. Not the youngest line cook. Not even the prep staff in the back. Tasha's cheeks flushed hot, but she said nothing, just started scrubbing trays, water dripping from her sleeves. Mitch moved through the kitchen like a storm front, shouting at one cook for underseasoning, throwing a ladle into the sink, cursing out a supplier, and slamming his clipboard hard enough that a pen bounced onto the floor. Jackson peeled carrots quietly, watching how every pair of eyes seemed to move on invisible strings, snapping away when Mitch passed, jerking toward him when his voice rose. This wasn't discipline. This wasn't passion. This was fear, and it had a pattern. It had been here long enough to settle into muscle memory. By lunch break, Jackson sat alone at the edge of the break room with a lukewarm paper cup of coffee. Danny, a wiry kid who couldn't have been more than 19, slid into the seat across from him. Sneakers torn at the toes, uniform too big, fingers restless on the table. "Always this hectic?" Jackson asked casually. Danny shrugged. "It's normal." "Mitch always like that?" Another shrug, then softer. "Yeah, been here since we opened. He knows he can say whatever he wants. No one reports it." "To who?" "Ronald. They're tight. Drink together every Saturday. You file a complaint. You lose shifts." Danny's eyes darted up, sharp, then back down. "Carla tried once. Lost half her hours the next week. They said it was budget. Wasn't." Jackson's gaze drifted to the sink, where Carla stood lifting trays with one elbow locked stiff. Her wrist was wrapped in a cheap brace. "She hurt?" 3 weeks now. Can't afford time off. Mitch knows." Jackson didn't have to ask the next question. The answer was already in Danny's look. This wasn't one bad day. It wasn't one bad manager. This was a system. A closed circle where Mitch ruled the kitchen and Ronald kept the door locked from the outside. By Tuesday, Jackson knew the pulse of the place. Which burners sputtered, which prep tables tilted, which knives dulled faster than they should. He knew who moved with the precision of soldiers and who moved like they were just trying to avoid the next hit. Mitch didn't bother learning names. He didn't need to. At 10:17 that morning, a last-minute order came in. Cocktail reception for 70 guests, Thursday night. Angela looked at the slip and sighed. "We're already maxed." "Then we go faster," Mitch said flatly. "No one's had a day off in over a week, and now's not the time to start. You want spa days? Go work at Whole Foods. Otherwise, we're doing it." Nobody argued. By noon, the back freezer jammed again. Carla and Danny struggled with a 40-pound box of beef tenderloin, its frost-slick surface slipping from their hands. Jackson stepped in to help. Carla winced, her bandaged wrist trembling. "You okay?" "Just tendinitis." "How long?" 3 weeks. "You reported?" She smiled without smiling. "They know." Mitch passed by just then, catching her rubbing her arm. "If you can't lift it, Carla, maybe you shouldn't be here. We don't carry people, we carry trays." Later, she dropped a small container of microgreens, spilling half onto the floor. Mitch didn't hesitate. "You blind or just clumsy? How many times do I have to clean up your mess?" Not one person looked up. Not Angela, not Danny, not Lisa, not even the 17-year-old dishwasher in the back. They heard every word, but the chopping and plating didn't stop. Jackson bent down and helped Carla gather the scattered greens in silence. His jaw was tight, his patience thinning. This wasn't leadership. This was cruelty wearing the mask of authority. Everyone in that kitchen had learned how to live with it. They didn't call it cruelty. They called it the way things are. You kept your head down, kept your mouth shut, and hoped you weren't the next one in the line of fire. Survival here was a skill. But Jackson Westbrook hadn't stepped into this kitchen to survive. He had come to see. And after days of quiet observation, he was nearly done watching. That morning, the produce delivery was late again. Jorge, broad-shouldered, sweat beading on his brow, pushed through the back entrance with 3 heavy dollies stacked high. "Sorry," he panted. "Traffic on I-44 was murder." Mitch didn't look up, just flicked a pen toward the clipboard without breaking his rhythm. Jackson, still Josh to them, was unloading boxes when Jorge muttered under his breath. "You knew." Jackson gave a short nod. Jorge checked over his shoulder, voice dropping lower. "You ever look at your invoices?" Jackson frowned. "Why?" "Because this order's light again." Jorge tapped the top crate. "Last week it was spinach. This week, microgreens. Stuff just disappears somewhere between the warehouse and here. I flagged it, sent emails. No one answers." "Who'd you report it to?" "Ronald," Jorge said. Got a one-line reply. "Thanks, we'll look into it." That was 2 months ago. Jackson's jaw tightened. "You talked to Mitch?" Jorge gave a humorless laugh. "Tried. He told me to stop stirring the pot." As if on cue, Mitch appeared around the corner. "What's the holdup?" "Just checking weights," Jorge said. "We good?" Mitch asked. "We're short again." Mitch waved a dismissive hand. "It balances out. I check logs. We're fine." He walked away without waiting for a response. Jorge met Jackson's eyes. "That's what I mean. Something's off. Somebody's skimming. I guarantee it." Jackson didn't answer. But later that night, after the last ticket had gone out and the kitchen was darkening, he slipped into the storage office. The air was stale, smelling faintly of old paper and burnt coffee. On the far shelf sat a binder marked vendor logs. He flipped through the past 6 weeks. Jorge was right. Quantities didn't match totals. Boxes marked as received were consistently 5 pounds short. Some items, on paper, had arrived but never touched the floor, and every single form bore Mitch's sprawling initials. Sloppy, confident, routine. Jackson's phone camera clicked quietly, snap, 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 until he had every page stored. This wasn't negligence. It was theft. And Mitch wasn't an oblivious bystander. He was signing off on it. That night, Jackson didn't leave with the others. He stayed, wiping down prep tables, stacking trays, and resetting the silverware station as if he had nowhere else to be. Tasha was still at the sink, hair pulled into a frayed ponytail, hands raw from sanitizer. She didn't see him watching at first. "You all right?" he asked gently. She froze, then nodded. "Just tired." "You've been quiet," he said. She gave a hollow laugh. "Quiet keeps you employed." He let the silence stretch. Eventually, she glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "I'm not here for a career. I just need rent money, make sure my kid eats. That's it." "You ever think about leaving?" he asked softly. Her jaw tightened. "And go where?" "I got fired from my last job for missing a day. My son had a fever. They didn't care. No one does." Jackson nodded slowly. There was nothing to say that wouldn't sound like a promise he couldn't keep. Not yet. Later, he found Lisa in dry storage, stacking boxes with her good hand. Her other wrist was wrapped tightly, the faded brace slipping from under her sleeve. You shouldn't be lifting with that, he said. I'll be fine. You could make it worse. If I don't show up, I lose my benefits, she replied flatly. If I lose those, I lose my medication, and then I'm no good to anyone. She turned, finally meeting his eyes. No one here is lazy. We're just tired and scared. We all know Mitch isn't fair, but we also know Ronald won't do a damn thing about it. Her breath came slow and shallow. So we shut up. We survive. Jackson's throat felt tight. He'd built this company to be a ladder, not a cage, to give people a place where their work mattered. And here it was, reduced to scraps, bruises, and whispered fear. He walked to the locker room in silence, pulled out his phone, and began typing. Not a report, not just notes, a plan. Tomorrow, something would break, and it wouldn't be the staff. By 9 p.m., the kitchen lights were dark. Jackson sat in his car down the block, engine off, windows fogging in the cool rain. He watched the staff leave in pairs, jackets zipped, hoods pulled up. Benny came out last. No coat, no umbrella. Just a worn backpack slung over one shoulder. He didn't look back, didn't check his phone, just walked into the rain like someone who had long since accepted being invisible. Jackson flipped to a clean page in his notepad. Westbrook, Day 2. Carla. Tendinitis, still lifting Lisa. Brace, won't risk time off. Tasha, afraid to speak. Benny. No transportation delivery discrepancies confirmed Mitch plus Ronald equals direct obstruction, culture equals toxic, enforced silence. He stared at the last line for a long time before underlining it twice. This wasn't just abuse. It wasn't just fraud. It was a system designed to shield both. He scrolled past personal texts, missed calls, and 3 unread emails from the board until he found the number he'd memorized but never used. HR Internal Audit Division. This is Alexis, a woman answered after 2 rings. Jackson Rhodes, he said quietly. You're calling from an unknown number. I know. Listen, I'm sending you something tonight. I want you to open it personally and keep it locked down. No CCs, no filters, just your eyes. A pause. Okay, go ahead. He hung up, attached the photos, vendor forms, shift logs, and time cards, and added a bullet point report marked Priority. Internal only. Then he leaned back, watching the rain streak down the windshield. Across the lot, a streetlight flickered above the dumpster. Plastic bags twisted in the wind like pale, wet ghosts. Tomorrow, Mitch would bark again. Tomorrow, Ronald might stroll in. And tomorrow, the kitchen would look exactly the same, except for one thing. Jackson Westbrook was done watching, and by morning, someone else would feel the weight of consequences. It began with a trash bag. Tasha was dragging it toward the back when the bottom split, spilling wilted lettuce, plastic wrap, and soggy breadcrumbs across the tile. Mitch spotted the mess from across the kitchen, his voice slicing through the clatter of knives and the hiss of steam. Damn it, Tasha! Every hand froze mid-motion. Blades hovered above cutting boards, trays hung in the air. He advanced like a storm front, eyes locked on her. You blind or just lazy? You want to work here or beg outside with the rest of the trash? Tasha stood there, sauce dripping down her forearms, humiliation burning on her cheeks. I'll clean it, she murmured. You better, Mitch snapped, jabbing a finger toward the spill. And don't dump it like last time. You've got 2 hands. Use them. That's when Jackson, still wearing the name Josh to everyone else, stepped forward. Enough. Mitch turned slowly, incredulous. Excuse me? You've been barking at her all week. She's doing her job. This is my kitchen, Mitch growled. You don't like it, walk? Jackson didn't blink. You've got half this staff scared to speak. You don't tell me how to run my crew. I don't have to, Jackson said evenly, slipping the glasses from his face. Because I own the damn crew. The room fell into dead silence. Tasha froze mid-step. Carla's tray clattered against stainless steel. Angela's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Mitch just stared. What? He muttered. My name is Jackson Rhodes, he said, stepping closer. I built this company from nothing. I've spent 2 days watching you humiliate people, ignore injuries, and sign off on supplier fraud. In my name. Angela rose slowly from her station. Wait, you're him? Jackson nodded. And this stops today. Mitch's gaze darted around the room, looking for allies. No one met his eyes. You're making a mistake, he tried. You need someone who can push these people. I need someone who respects them, Jackson shot back. Grab your things. You're done here. Mitch's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. He turned and walked to the back door without a word. The metal frame rattled when it slammed shut. Jackson faced the room. If anyone else thinks abuse is part of this job, speak now. No one moved. His voice softened. Brenda, interim kitchen manager starting tomorrow. I'll bring in a trainer and you'll get a raise. Full authority to hire who you need. She blinked, stunned. Are you serious? Absolutely. And just like that, the kitchen began to breathe again. Ronald showed up just after 2. Pressed shirt, clipboard under one arm, sunglasses still on indoors. He strutted in like he owned the place, until he saw Jackson. He stopped mid-stride. Well, he said, sliding his sunglasses down. Didn't expect to see you here. Same, Jackson replied flatly. Ronald forced a chuckle. Look, I know Mitch's style isn't for everyone, but the guy got results. We hit every target last quarter. You don't get points for numbers, Jackson cut in. When people are afraid to speak. Ronald tilted his head. You think you're getting the full story from these folks? Half of them haven't even been here a year. And yet they're still standing, Jackson said. That should tell you something. Ronald stepped closer, lowering his voice. You're making changes, firing people without warning. Do you know how hard Mitch was to replace? I'm not replacing him with another bully, Jackson said, and I'm not asking for your permission. Ronald's tone sharpened. You're compromising productivity. Jackson didn't blink. Then we redefine productivity. Behind them, Brenda's hands had stilled on a tray, eyes fixed on the exchange. You don't want to do this, Ronald warned. You're being reassigned, Jackson said, calm as stone. Effective immediately. Ronald gave a short, strained laugh. You're serious? You're not welcome in this branch anymore. HR will follow up. He looked around for someone, anyone, to back him, but no one met his eyes. Finally, he muttered something under his breath and walked out. The front door slammed, the frame shuddering. Brenda looked up. I didn't think you'd actually say it to his face. He's been promoting toxicity, Jackson said simply. That ends here. Later that day, HR arrived. Clipboards in hand, a thick folder stamped internal audit. Jackson handed them the vendor logs himself. Start here. Don't stop until you've looked under every rock. By Wednesday morning, the kitchen felt different. Not quieter in sound. The burners still hissed, timers still buzzed, knives still whispered against cutting boards. But the air was lighter. The constant tension had evaporated. Brenda was early, unlocking the back door herself, clipboard in hand, moving through inventory with the authority of someone who had always known what she was doing. She'd just never been given permission to do it. Tasha came in second. She moved deliberately, earbuds in, apron tied clean. No torn trash bags, no unnecessary weight. Jackson entered next. No disguise, no false name, just himself. He wasn't here to pretend anymore. He was here to make sure the new order took root. Benny waved from the dish pit. Jackson returned the nod. Morning. Brenda approached mid-shift, eyes clearer than they'd been in days. We've got 6 events this week, including Thursday's reception. How tight are we? Jackson asked. I pulled in 2 temps from East Side, both certified on hotline and plating. What do you need from me? She hesitated, then said, a second freezer truck. Ours is maxed, and the backup's unreliable. I'll have one delivered by noon. Her eyes widened. Seriously? He smiled. Seriously. You asked, Jackson said simply. I listened. Brenda nodded once, then turned back to her inventory list. That morning, Lisa had finally called out, gone to the doctor to get her wrist checked. Jackson made certain her pay would continue as if she were still on the line. No deductions, no guilt, just the space to heal. The freezer unit arrived just before noon. Brenda had already cleared space in the alley, measured twice, and marked the spot with chalk. The delivery driver asked where to park. She didn't pause to ask anyone else, just pointed, eyes still on her clipboard. People moved without waiting for approval. The old culture had rewarded fear. The new one rewarded competence. That afternoon, Jackson helped sort dry goods with Joel, the quiet temp from East Side. His hands were steady, his eyes sharp, his movements precise. He didn't ask for much, just to be given the work and left to do it well. "You've got good instincts," Jackson said. "Where'd you train?" Joel shrugged. "No school. Learned on the line. You want to move up?" Joel hesitated, then, "Yeah, but only if I can work under someone like Brenda." Jackson didn't reply. He didn't have to. By day's end, the kitchen looked almost unchanged. Same scuffed tiles, same flickering light above the prep sink. But the rhythm was different now. For the first time in months, no one was just surviving their shift. They were working it together. The Thursday reception should have been routine, until the client called with a change. Their original venue had canceled. The entire event was moving up 24 hours. Brenda didn't flinch. She gathered everyone into a quick huddle. "We're down, Lisa. The temps are solid but still learning. That means full efficiency from everyone. I'll handle logistics, packaging, transport, setup," Jackson said. "You focus on food." Benny raised a hand. "I can prep trays if someone else double-checks my weights." "I got you," Joel offered without hesitation. No groans, no complaints. They just broke, split, and started moving. By noon, the plating station was alive with motion. Tasha was on garnish, shoulders squared, hands steady. Jackson leaned in to check spacing. "Looks good," he said. "Don't be afraid to adjust if it starts to crowd. The client doesn't see the reference photo, they see what's in front of them." She gave a small nod. "Not used to being trusted with this?" "You don't have to be. That's why I'm here." The van rolled in at 2:30 sharp. Every tray was labeled, sealed, and staged at the exit. Brenda managed loading with the calm precision of someone who'd been doing it for years, just never with anyone noticing. Jackson carried the heavier trays himself. No one asked him to. By 4:55, they were at the venue. A converted loft with exposed brick and a freight elevator that felt too small for the job. They adapted. No one had to tell them how. Under the warm lighting, the hors d'oeuvres gleamed like tiny sculptures. The event manager pulled Jackson aside near the bar. "Your team's ahead of schedule. Every tray's perfect. If this is how you handle pressure, I'll recommend you to every client I have." Jackson nodded. "Appreciate it." She tilted her head. "I've worked with your Southside branch before. It's never run this smooth." "Sometimes," Jackson said quietly. "You don't know what's wrong until you walk in yourself." By 7 p.m., they were back at the kitchen. Cleanup moved at a steady pace. No rushing, no dragging, no tension. Brenda looked up from her notes. "Tomorrow's light. 2 small orders. I gave Joel and Tasha the morning off." "Good. Draft the new training schedule for next week. Everyone gets cross-trained on at least 2 stations. Send it to me when it's ready." She nodded once. They didn't need to say more. They'd just pulled off one of the tightest turnarounds in company history. Without Mitch, without shouting, without fear. And they'd done it better than ever. The kitchen wasn't spotless. There were still streaks on the fridge, dents in the prep table, that stubborn hum from the light above the sink. But it was clean. More importantly, it was calm. Joel stacked unused trays. Benny reset the line. Tasha dried utensils, humming under her breath. "You're staying involved," Brenda said later, meeting Jackson near the back door. "I'm not going back to headquarters until I've walked every branch. You'll get pushback. Some managers won't like being audited." "They don't have to like it. They just have to run their kitchens right." She studied him. This place never needed a hero, you know. Jackson waited. It just needed someone to listen. I'm listening now. Then keep listening. He didn't answer, just turned toward the hallway, the door clicking softly behind him. That night, he stayed late, reorganizing dry storage with Tasha. She didn't talk much, but when they finished, she gave a single nod. Thanks, she said. He locked up alone. No cameras, no applause. Just a kitchen that finally felt like it belonged to the company he'd built. Thursday morning came early. He arrived before dawn, gloves in his pocket, checklist under his arm. No speeches, no announcements. He clocked in, double-checked prep, helped Tasha carry a box of limes up from delivery. At 8:17, he stepped outside. The loading bay was still, the alley was dry. The city's noise was a muted hum behind brick walls. Brenda joined him, coffee in hand. Feels like we're holding it together. You are, he said. You really plan to do this one branch at a time? Quietly, he replied. But yes, and when I find more Mitchs, you'll remove them. He nodded. She was quiet for a moment. You built this place. Why'd it take so long to see what was happening? I stopped looking in the right places, trusted the wrong people to tell me the truth. You're lucky they didn't all walk out. I know. She finished her coffee. We'll need a runner for tomorrow's dessert platters. I'll handle it. That night, he left through the same back door he'd entered through as Josh. The alley lights buzzed overhead, the scent of citrus and salt still lingering in the air. No one clapped. No one even noticed. And that was exactly the point. Because this wasn't about being seen. It was about showing up. Jackson's voice stayed low in his own head as he walked to his car. I'm not here to be a hero. I'm here to make sure no one has to survive their shift.